Afternoon, West in the world. It's Tuesday, February the 25th. This is your final review video before exam 2, following this morning's lecture on industrialization and its effects. Our lecture last Thursday introduced us to the causes of the Industrial Revolution and why it is that England is the birthplace of this. Today we were trying to concentrate on the question of what are the effects of industrialization. While it has obvious sort of beneficial effects in the acceleration of wealth accumulation, in the improvements in technology and productivity, we also learned that it comes at a tremendous human cost. And whether in the long run we're better off or not was something of a complicated or perhaps open question rather than one that has a clear-cut answer. Our discussion today sort of centered around three clusters of thoughts. The first one was the question of what does it mean that there's this dramatic growth of urban environments, surely the most visible manifestation of industrialization. And we saw that it had some very serious consequences in terms of people's exposure to diseases, the problems of sanitation. We saw also that there are questions about how this is affecting sort of moral and social life and more. The second thing that we saw was the way in which the changes of industrialization are added to or magnify the effects of the French Revolution and its ideas in terms of changing social norms or social classes, so that we see the differentiation within the old sort of third estate, that classification of commoners, of working class people and a business-oriented bourgeoisie. The tensions between them we saw are quite numerous, but we especially concentrated on the problems of working class living and working conditions, and especially as it pertained to children, where we saw that there were many sort of horrifying features of life, whether in cotton mills or coal mines or anywhere else in the industrial world. And the last thing that we sort of concentrated on and tried to develop had to do with resistance to industrialization, or people who were calling for reform. And we heard a variety of voices or saw a variety of perspectives on how change should come about. Some were solidly middle-class people like Dickens or Booth, who wanted to sort of impose or bring about reform on behalf of working class people. There were others like Marx and Robert Owen, who had more socialist visions that called for deeper kinds of fundamental changes in terms of the distribution of resources and the ways that society organized itself. And then, of course, there were the workers themselves and their demands, as expressed whether in movements like the Luddites or in the case of the growth of trade unions and them using the development of the mechanism of the strike as a way of mounting protest or expressing their concerns about industrialization. Ultimately, of course, the question of whether industrialization is good or bad, whether the human costs associated with it are worth the price that was paid, are worth it for the benefits that we attain, it's not a question that we can answer. It's a highly complicated and subjective one. Once we move past the test, we're going to see the ways in which the effects of industrialization, the growth of Western economies, fundamentally changes Western relationships with the rest of the world. Those will be themes we develop more carefully starting next week. Good luck with your final preparations for Thursday's exam.